Welcome back live from Los Angeles. We have John Livesay in the house, who is a dear friend of mine. He is considered the pitch whisperer. He's an author. He's a success coach. He is incredible. I just love you, John. I'm so glad you're here.
It's so great to be with you and two of your new great friends.
Right?
On the show.
Thank
you for being here.
So you have worked with, you've worked with so many companies, branding, doing all kinds of things, helping with sales. And recently, of course, you have books that have come out. I've watched you in all this stuff. One of the genius things I've watched you do is help people start their podcasts. You were one of the first people that said to me, having a show is not so much about having the show become huge. It's about the relationships that come out of that and the genius of that. And that, for me, changed my entire thinking around everything I was doing. So thank you for that.
Fantastic. Well, they always say that your network is your net worth.
Ooh, I am rich.
So the kinds of people I've been able to get on my podcast have incredible influence, and I would never get to know these people, but having the podcast is a way to get them on and get a relationship going, and then who they've introduced me to is a wonderful thing. So I really encourage a lot of people to explore having your own way of creating weekly content without having to write a word.
Right.
Because you can take the transcript from the podcast, and I do it posted as an article on LinkedIn every week. So there's lots of ways to get that, and I had to overcome a lot of fears. And we talk about transformation of starting a podcast. Because someone said, well, why don't you start a podcast? I'm like, well, why don't I go to the moon? I don't know how to do that. So and I realized I had some fear, and I thought for me, I had to put some faces on it. And the first one was the fear of rejection. What if I asked some, celebrities like you to be on my show? And I'm like, well, do you have any episodes we could listen to? And I'd be like, no, you'd be the first. So it was the fear of rejection. And for me, Erin, we talk about this all the time from a spiritual standpoint. Never reject yourself. Because in your head, you go, oh, somebody else could have gotten a yes, somebody else would be, And if you don't reject yourself, that's the key of overcoming that fear.
That fear resides so deeply within me because I have trouble asking for what I want. I can talk my way around it till I am blue in the face, and I wait for that opportunity to be given or presented by the person, especially if I'm interacting with a man. And I want to ask for something. I can't bring myself to do it.
Part of what's going on is you're afraid of being rejected, it sounds like. And the way to do that is just go, I'm not afraid of the no. And let go of, just trust the process. And when the second fear for me, maybe was for you as well, was the fear of failure. Which, what if I have a podcast and no one downloads it? And I'll be embarrassed and I'll waste all this time and money. And one of my guests, Jay Sammet, said, you know what? Failure's just feedback. Keep going till you get a zombie idea. This is clearly a zombie idea. So great it won't die.
We're a zombie. I feel like a zombie after waking up every single day of the week.
If you look at failure as just feedback, or the no is just feedback, it's no for now, or no, that's not a fit, then I think you'll be more empowered to ask for what you want sooner.
I just love that. One of my favorite books, my second favorite book now, was I Can't Accept Not Trying by Michael Jordan. And he basically says, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Exactly.
But it's a hard thing to think about when you're in the moment and there's so much fear. So is there anything that you've sort of encourage people to do to get through the fear when they're in the moment and they want to ask for help or they want to ask for help?
Yes, well, the third fear for me was not only the fear of rejection, the fear of failure, but the fear of the unknown. And that's a big one. That's what almost stopped me from doing the podcast. I didn't even know what mic to buy, let alone who to interview, right? So the secret to overcoming the fear of the unknown is don't go it alone. Collaborate. Get people to help you. In my case, I found people that produce the podcast for me, so I don't have to learn all that. So I think if you realize that you don't take rejection personally, failure's just feedback, and the unknown, collaborate, don't go it alone, then whatever fear is coming up, you'll be able to conquer.
Love that. So powerful.
So I know for podcasts, it's so interesting because you only think of whatever genre you're interested in. But people could do it that are just even in a traditional business, right? Tell us a little bit about that, some of the clients you work with and how it's transformed their business.
Well, one of my clients is Gensler, which is the world's largest architecture firm. And they hire me to help them with their presentations and their storytelling. I say, forget selling and tell stories instead. Whoever tells the best stories gets the person that's the yes, because we're wired for that. So what's happening for a lot of architects is they wait for someone to send them a proposal and then they go in. But there's no relationship before they go into that room. The podcast starts the relationship 6 months before they even realize they need an architect. So I've helped them start a podcast where they're interviewing potential clients and finding out what keeps them up at night. when you ask those kinds of questions on a podcast, then you get insights as to what they need 6 months, a year from now.
Fantastic.
So would somebody like that, because I have a dear friend that's also thinking about starting a podcast. She has a UX company and she's doing marketing. Thought, well, why don't you consider doing that? Because then you'd have those relationships. But who would be her client? Would it be the client that she would want to be reaching to have another like in her field, like another UX person? But if her client is someone who doesn't really understand UX, and they might not necessarily be looking for a podcast that's just on UX, how would you strategize something like that?
Well, I work with people to say, who's your ideal client and who are you having trouble getting past the gatekeepers? Like, oh, you can't talk to them for whatever reason. But if you invite them to be on your podcast, you bypass all the gatekeepers. And that's who you want to have on your show.
So let's talk about pitching those gatekeepers.
Yes.
Because that is a huge secret. I was reading in your book, The Successful Pitch, some of the forewords. Kim Douglas even said she worked with you. She's a world-renowned beauty expert in pitching Ellen. She got on the show. She's been on the show now for 8 years.
Do you want to hear that story of how I helped her get on Ellen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Kim, as you know, has been on television many times. And when she first pitched Ellen, I was working at W Magazine and they had her on the cover as Ellen DeGlamorous, the first time she was hosting the Oscars. And Kim's first book was The Black Book of Hollywood Beauty Secrets. And she pitched the producers and they said, Ellen doesn't really have a lot of authors on the show. She just is really focused on her hair color, not a lot of beauty. Thanks, but no thanks. Maybe you should talk to Oprah. She has authors on. This is when Oprah was still on. I said, okay, Kim, that's our first no. But your book is all about how to get red carpet ready. And Ellen's got, the guy from, the fitness helping her get in shape. So why don't we really target what to do the day before the Oscars and make it funny? Because you're funny and Ellen's funny. So when we figured out what the segment would look like as related to Ellen going on the Oscars that Sunday, she got on that Friday and I was in the dressing room with her.
Wow.
And there was a whole thing about, the spray of this particular fragrance makes you appear younger. And so Ellen grabs the bottle and starts spraying. She goes, oh my God, the set looks brand new. And then, one of Kim's tip was put some rose petals down your brassiere and you'll smell like roses when you're walking around the Oscars. And so, Ellen grabs half a grapefruit, which is the fragrance, and some rose petals, and they're doing a whole Lucy Ethel thing, and that's why Kim's been able to be on all these years, multiple times.
But what is so genius about that is Kim obviously is the expert, she's the product. It was just a way of tweaking the pitch.
Exactly.
She's still selling the same thing.
Yes, but it was a very customized, we're gonna help Ellen get ready for red carpet. Is she wearing a dress or not? What beauty secrets? And of course, they're funny beauty secrets, and then boom, they had the chemistry that the three of you have, and it was off and running.
Wow. Oh, you another check.
But it's really goes to show, though, that no doesn't mean never. It means not now.
Exactly.
So if you adjust the way you're pitching or you're having this conversation, negotiating this deal, accept the no, rework your pitch, and go back for it.
That's what storytelling is so great. If you can create a story for someone where they see themselves in the story, imagine it's the Friday before the Oscars and Kim's helping Ellen get ready for well, suddenly now they see that story, they see the segment, and it's perfect timing for what they need at that moment. So you're absolutely right.
And that's like Good Morning LaLa. We're really trying to create the story, maybe you can help us a little, around that La La Land's not just about LA. La La Land is really about dreamers. It's about people that have the, courage to persevere through the hard times and go for their dreams and do good in the world and make a difference, really. So what do you think? I mean, how do we make that story more?
Well,
how do we
I would
develop
tell that story in terms of why did people come to California in the first place?
Sunshine
the
and
gold
the
rush.
dream.
Right?
The
You
gold
can go back
rush.
further. The gold rush, right? Looking for their dreams. How did Hollywood get started? Right? Because the weather was great here and it was a way to do that. It's tap into the story of origin. Whoever you are, you've got your own story of origin and everyone wants to know, how did you start? How did you start? We can't all imagine you being this gorgeous and talented from the beginning.
This shit
but you
doesn't
had
That's right. Look up like that.
You had camera ready.
by chance.
Right, but when you go back to the story of origin of what do people associate with Hollywood and how even the movie La La Land, right? There's a reason why this particular location is situated, and even now in Silicon Beach compared to Silicon Valley, right? That there's a whole mindset of dreams can come true no matter what industry you're in. But Hollywood is all about storytelling, and when you tell that story of what this show's about, then the appeal gets much broader than just you have to live here in LA because we're talking about the traffic. No. We're talking about changing your life.
We need to script our reel, our trailer for it, for sure. It's so good. Your work is profound, John. You have impacted my life. You've impacted so many lives. And we met because we were at a spiritual center, Global
Yes.
Truth Center. Big shout out to James Mellon and everyone over there. And I do believe that your mindset and those truths have really helped you on your journey. Tell us a little bit about how that's benefited this journey for you.
For me, one of the things is when you think it, you can believe it, and then it happens, right? The concept that you're as happy as your thoughts. So if you get to control your thoughts, which control your beliefs, then you can have that. One of my recent goals was to do a TEDx talk. And I was applying to a lot of different places, and it's like an audition for an actor. Like, oh, you made the cutback, but not yet. Right? And for a year and a half, 15 different locations saying almost, but no, I had to walk my own talk of not taking rejection personally. And then I got a yes. And I was like, ah. And it all fit into a theme of amazement, and it's about being the lifeguard of your own life. And how, if you take that on as, unlike in a hurricane when they send a helicopter in to rescue you, no one's going to do that for you. You got to rescue yourself.
Wow.
And when we have that mindset, because my personal goal is to get as many people as possible off the self-esteem roller coaster. I was on it myself. I only feel good if my numbers are up and I'm making tons of money, and I feel bad about myself if I'm not hitting my goals. And I'm looking at how many likes I have or whatever all that craziness is that we get caught up in. But when you remember that who you are is bigger than anything happening to you, then you're off the self-esteem roller coaster, and you're happy regardless of what's going on. You're not needing all that outside confirmation to tell you who you are is enough.
Right.
So powerful.
Beautifully
So
said.
powerful.
And I think most of us have had that experience in life where we've had this conditional kind of self-love, and conditional kind of self-esteem, and it's great when things are going well, and then when things aren't, it's not, and you don't have the resources to really pull yourself back up.
Right, or even our bodies, right? You're like, oh, I only have a 6-pack and not an 8-pack, right? And suddenly you're all nervous, right? Am I enough? Right? You can drive yourself crazy, right?
And it's endless.
Right,
Yeah.
it's endless, right? Well, I'm only gorgeous if I'm this amount of weight or have this much money in the bank. I don't feel secure. All of that's constant up and down, and we have to transform that. And to your other question earlier about how do we get people to say yes to us when we find the courage to ask that question, people by transformation, and since that's the theme today, I thought that was really valuable to underline, not information. So when you're asking someone to say yes to you, whether it's a TEDx talk, sponsor me for whatever it is, tell the story of what that does for you when you're going to go from here to here, as opposed to just spewing out a bunch of information.
Such a powerful point, and I really appreciate you highlighting that, because I think we've all discovered that people really make decisions from an emotional place.
Exactly.
Not from a logical place. They backfill it with data and logic. And I love that you share that, and I love that you live that too. That's part of, I think, your gift is you're able to connect with people on an emotional level.
You have a distinction around that. They start with the gut,
Yes.
the heart. Yep.
Yep. There's 3 unspoken questions people have when they hear you pitch anything. Do I trust you? Which is a gut thing. And the best, that's where the handshake came from, to show I didn't have a weapon. And then it moves from the gut to the heart. Do I like you? The more you put your empathy hat on and show you can understand what that person's going through, your likability goes up. Teachers spend more time with students they like. Doctors spend more time with patients they like. So you want to have your gut, your heart, and then it goes to the head. And as you're telling what you're going to do, people are thinking to themselves, will this work for me? Can I see myself in this story? So gut, heart, head. Most people think it's the opposite. Oh, if I get to know you, then you like me, then you trust me. You got to start from the bottom up, not the top down.
So
Wow.
true. So where can people find you?
My website, John Livesay, Livesay, and if you text the word pitch to 66866, I'll send you my free book, Getting to Yes,
Wow.
From Invisible to Irresistible.
I love that.
Wow.
He is high tech too. You're texting right now. I love you so much, John.
I
Thank you
love
so
you,
much
Erin.
for coming down. We're going
Such
to take a
What a
little
pleasure.
break. Right, we're going to take a little break, talk
you.
about some more
Thank you.
transformation, and